Weapons technology is developing at a crazy pace. Before World War II, building nuclear weapons seemed impossible, but now governments around the world control insane military technology that dwarfs the bombs used in World War II. Today, we're answering the question, what's the most powerful weapon in the world? The Tsar Bomba is the single most powerful bomb in the world. In fact, the Tsar Bomba is just a nickname for the Soviet RDS-220 hydrogen bomb. Detonated by the Soviet Union on October 30th, 1961, this weapon raised the stakes of the Cold War immensely. It generated the single largest explosion in human history, with a yield of approximately 50 megatons of TNT. The Tsar Bomba was the end result of years of testing by both the Soviet Union and the United States. The results of its explosion were so terrifying that both countries decreased testing of their nuclear weapons, though they kept their stockpiles in place. These days, testing takes place in much more covert conditions. The bomb was 8 meters long, had a diameter of nearly 2.6 meters, and weighed more than 27 tons. It was physically very similar in shape to the Little Boy and Fat Man bombs, which had devastated the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki a decade and a half earlier. To the untrained eye, these bombs were extremely similar, but the bombs used on Japan pale in comparison to the power of the Tsar Bomba. Its yield was approximately 1,570 times more powerful than the yield of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined, and 10 times more powerful than all the conventional weapons exploded during World War II. Tsar Bomba also represented 25% of the estimated yield of the Krakatoa volcanic eruption of 1883 and 10% of all nuclear tests by this point. By comparison, the B-41, the largest United States nuclear weapon, had a theoretical yield of 25 megatons, less than half the amount of the Tsar Bomba. The largest nuclear device ever detonated by the United States was Castle Bravo with a yield of 15 megatons. The explosion was so powerful that it actually knocked the aircraft out of the sky, causing the plane to plummet 3,000 feet before the pilot could right it. Footage of the detonation was recently declassified by the Russian military after years under wraps. Of course, both the Soviet Union and the US were engaged in calculated propaganda, and the video labels the test of the clean hydrogen bomb, indicating that there will be no negative health or environmental effects from the explosion. This once secret footage is truly amazing to behold. The bomb falls from the plane with a small parachute to decrease its speed. With exact precision, the Soviet scientists time its descent, and when it finally explodes, a blinding white light fills the screen. This was visible for more than 1,000 kilometers in every direction. After only a few seconds, the diameter of the mushroom cloud grew to 10 kilometers, wiping out everything in its vicinity. The mushroom cloud reached 65 kilometers over the surface of the Earth. Rosatom, Russia's state atomic energy agency, released the footage in late August 2020, nearly 60 years after the King of Bombs claimed its title. It was detonated over the Novaya Zemlya Islands in the Russian Arctic. Though Russia claims that there were no casualties from the bombing, these islands are still inhabited to this day, and many local residents have experienced negative health effects. Of course, the specific site of the bombing is not inhabited. Several studies have shown that a high level of radiation is observed in the area where the Tsar bomb was tested. Every statistic about Tsar Bomba's destructive power is difficult to grasp. Even the Soviets were surprised by how powerful the enormous bomb was. Tsar Bomba was the ultimate and most terrifying manifestation of the nuclear era, an age that began with the first nuclear detonation by the US at 5:29 a.m. on July 16, 1945, during the Trinity tests of the Manhattan Project, and continues to this day. A weapon like Tsar Bomba would have been difficult for the Soviet Union to deploy in a first strike nuclear attack on America. US strategic defenses in the Cold War were built up of concentric rings of distant early warning radars, air defense fighters, long-range anti-aircraft missiles with nuclear warheads like the CIM-10C bomb arc, and a series of decreasing-range nuclear and conventionally armed surface-to-air missiles like the Nike Hercules and Nike Ajax. Some of the US response to a nuclear first strike from the Soviet Union was automated, especially detection of unknown radar contacts approaching the US. Tsar Bomba was too heavy and degraded the performance of its delivery aircraft too much to be used in an effective surprise first strike. During the single test of the weapon, there was a sense that the crew of the bomber dropping the weapon only had a 50% chance of escaping its blast effects. In the end, the pilot survived, but just barely. There are no records of how Major Andrei Dunovtsev fared after the explosion, but most doctors assume he developed health problems due to the radiation. Tsar Bomba could have theoretically yielded as much as 100 megatons, or twice as much as its actual explosion, but it would have resulted in a dangerous level of nuclear fallout. Additionally, the delivery plane would not have had sufficient time to retreat to a safe distance. Therefore, to minimize nuclear fallout, the third stage incorporated a lead tamper instead of a uranium-238 fusion tamper. It has been speculated that the second stage used this method as well. Even if the US intercepted this missile, it could have had devastating consequences. The extreme damage and devastation wrought by thermonuclear weapons like the Tsar Bomba is unimaginable. If such a weapon exploded in a large American city, such as New York, Chicago, San Francisco, or Washington, D.C., their metropolitan areas plus large portions of their surrounding suburbs would be completely destroyed and nearly devoid of all life. All of the wooden and brick buildings in nearby Severny, located 35 miles from the aiming point of Ground Zero, were annihilated. In other Soviet districts located over 100 miles from Ground Zero, wooden houses were demolished and brick and stone ones suffered damages. Radio communication outages were also reported. One test witness felt the thermal effects at a distance of 170 miles, even with dark goggles. The intense heat from the detonation was capable of causing third-degree burns at a distance of 62 miles from Ground Zero. The shockwave was felt as far away as the Dixon settlement, located 430 miles away, and windows shattered at a distance of 560 miles. Windows even shattered as far away as Norway and Finland due to the atmospheric focusing of the shockwave. Sadly, like with most other bomb testings, the indigenous population of these islands was displaced, and their ancestral home was annihilated. These days, there are only 300 known Nearnet people living in the region. Due to their removal from their homeland, in addition to persecution on mainland Russia, the Nearnet people are losing their language and culture. In subsequent years, they have mostly been removed from their homes to allow oil and gas exploration in the resource-rich Yamal Peninsula. Needless to say, this was by far the most intimidating experiment of its kind. Though Russia and the United States are still at odds, along with newer nuclear powers like Iran, North Korea and India, they are usually not so forthcoming about their threats. But Russia is still building a nuclear armory. In 2019, Vladimir Putin announced that they had tested a bomb nicknamed Satan II, which was similar in stature to Tsar Bomba. This weapon was also roughly 3,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, but Putin also claims it's capable of maneuvering through any defense system. Putin said that the invulnerable solo-based weapon has been in development since 2001, following President George W. Bush's decision to pull out of a 1972 US-Soviet anti-ballistic missile treaty. Revealing the weapon, Putin addressed the US and said he had warned Bush not to withdraw from the treaty. "You didn't listen to our country then," he said. "Listen to us now." He went on to say the missile has practically no range restrictions, though The Guardian cited state media reports detailing a range of around 6,800 miles. Regardless, the president claimed it can evade even the most advanced missile defense systems, such as those fielded by the US. The bomb could devastate an area the size of England and Wales combined. It has an incredibly short launch burn phase, the time US satellites find it easiest to track, and it then basically disappears. Because of its increased trajectory, the Satan II can travel over the South Pole to hit the West rather than the shorter North Pole route. This again means it is invisible to US tracking satellites. Though political relations don't feel as tense as they did during the Cold War, Russian and American foreign policy is still at odds. In the coming years, citizens of both countries hope that they can reach an understanding without warfare.